Hello again, ladies and gents. Just to interrupt you for the next 25, 30 minutes or so, as we introduce today's speakers for our discussion. And this is really about a discussion. So please do utilize the chat box in this instance, as we hear from Ashanti and Kate, your experience in the events world. This is really about gathering an insight about what's going on in the industry, how people can prepare and plan, and how to look ahead, really, to be better informed and also inform others around them. So as I say, use the chat to make discussion rather than more of a self-promotion tool in this instance. And also the Q&A area just along from the chat box. If you have any questions for Ashanti or Kate as we go, please do pop them in there. I will just invite Ashanti and Kate onto the screen with me now. So Ashanti and
everyone.
Okay. Good morning, Ashanti. How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right.
Just waiting on Kate.
Hello.
There we go. Hi, Kate. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Before we get straight into it, guys, just a very quick introduction from you both. So, Kate, firstly, just a very quick intro.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I run a business called Selling Savvy. We do reactive sales training and proactive sales mentoring for the hospitality and events industry. So hotels, venues, event suppliers and venue finders.
Fantastic. And Ashanti?
Hi, everyone. I run a company called Event Mind, and we produce virtual and hybrid events. That's what we do.
Fantastic. Very relevant in today's day and age. And guys, it'd be very easy to focus on the challenges that the industry is facing. So we can kind of look ahead now and let's think about what things are going to look like in the future and how venues are having to prepare, how event organizers are having to prepare, and what the experience is going to be like. And on that note, around the experience, let's firstly get your views on what the experience is going to look like, both from an in-person event and an online event. So Ashanti, firstly to you, what's the event experience going to be like?
Yeah, so for sure, it's definitely going to be, so it depends. If it's B2B, I think it's going to be hybrid. So there'll be a mix of virtual and physical. And Kate will talk a lot more about some of the social distancing measures that are going to come in, I think, and impact, the physicality of going to an event. On the B2C front, what we're seeing is people are eager to go out again. People do have some disposable income as well, and they're eager to be out with friends and family. So I think although there are the normal hesitations about safety and whether or not there's going to be a second wave, there is an eagerness to support local and to get out there and socialize again.
Yeah, that's it. And Kate, and in your line of work, what are you hearing? Speaking to lots of venues, speaking to event planners, that sort of thing. What's the general consensus about from an experience perspective?
I think experience is going to be the key to hospitality and the events industry. If people, I think the key to kind of businesses that are going to succeed is that they have to prove that in-person experience is worth having it in person and risking, maybe is the word, to have it in person. Otherwise, everything's going to be bought online. And I think for kind of business events, like Ashanti said, capacities are getting lower in hotels with social distancing. The new 1 meter rule has helped that, but the experience is never going to be the same as it was. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. The whole journey, I mean, I'm sure loads of people have seen all over LinkedIn and socials and hotel websites that they've really focused on what that new journey is going to look like, from pre-arrival to as soon as you step foot in the door around the hotel. I've done a list of lots of great ideas that I've seen out there. Obviously, there's loads of cleaning involved, but there's also lots of creative things that people are coming up with to make sure that experience isn't that too as dissimilar as it can be from the normal.
Yeah, I think that's definitely applicable, whether people in here are event organizers, whether that's a seminar or a workshop or a conference. The experience of in-person events has got to be so good now because people are becoming more familiar with the technology, aren't they? And that's something that we're seeing that will come out of this with a hybrid of online events and in-person events. And that's purely from people being able to adopt the technology easily. I mean, from your experience, and then back to Kate on this one, just a few examples of how perhaps venues are having to prepare to make that experience for in-person that as top-notch as it can be.
I think it all comes down, I mean, obviously I'm a trainer, but I do believe a lot in education, and educating your teams, and I don't teach this side of it, but educating your teams on what hybrid events are, what they look like, how they work, how the AV works, all of that information. Clients are going to expect that teams know that now. And when they go for show rounds and appointments, they're going to be asking these sorts of questions. And also just again educating on, somebody was saying on the group networking table earlier that at weddings people aren't allowed to sing because obviously your saliva can go a bit further, which is really gross, but anyway, and all of those points, hotel and venue and event organizer teams are going to have to know every single detail in order to plug what they can do. So massive education in AV and the kind of rules, I guess.
And the hybrid events has become a term that you guys have taught me actually from our conversation last week. And Ashanti, what is a hybrid event? Because it is a fascinating combination of having people at an in-person event, but also allowing people to tune in, I guess. But yeah. What do you see the future of hybrid events being, and what is it exactly?
Yeah, sure. So I think, for example, I guess definitely for B2B, now there is that potential to have your live event in the traditional way where people came along, but using the virtual environment to create community before that event, during the event, and after. And what that will do is allow you to have a larger reach. So you, for example, you could sell your live ticket events, but you can also sell a virtual ticket event to the event. And that actually increases your revenue because you'll have people who can make the physical, and then you'll have people who actually want to tune in a virtual way, and maybe not even live. Maybe they want to be able to consume that content at their own pace, at their own convenience. And what we're seeing, for example, in North America is what's happening there is that people are having more of their domestic regional events where people come in person, and then guests who would have been international are purchasing virtual tickets. And they're just tuning in a virtual way. But the reach is so much bigger now. And if you think about it as well, you cross over time zones, which is brilliant if you are a B2B conference. So there's really multiple benefits in terms of building, larger subscription lists.
Yeah.
We've seen publishing companies see phenomenal growth over the last 3 months because they realized through running events like this one, there were so many people who were following them on social media who were not paid subscribers, but they've used virtual events to bring those people into their paid subscription list. Now, when they start rerunning their live events, they've got even more people now that they can sell those tickets to. So it's really quite interesting the way you can now structure your business model to make more money.
So again, to make it relevant to perhaps people within the event and also in our line of work, if we were running a networking event or someone was running a seminar and there was a particular speaker that people could purchase, they could live stream that online and people could purchase access to that.
And then they can, so also remember in the virtual, again, when you add this virtual element in, you have a mix of live content and a mix of recorded content. So maybe you go live, you can have that live content recorded and resell the entry to see that content at a different time. So you can have it, you can put it into an evergreen marketing funnel where you can continually sell the virtual tickets to that recorded content, or you can put a limit of time on it, or you can put it into a resource hub. So that's something that we're working a lot with our trade show clients on. How do you make this content last longer and make more money from that content? So you can put it in a resource hub and just sell tickets again to your live customers, or potentially those who just want to connect with you in a virtual context so they can access the content.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's lots of opportunity with hybrid events for lots of different industries that service events, from AV, video, all these kind of areas, and the future of these hybrid events, the online v in person. We spoke last week about the need for collaborative approaches to events rather than competition. How can you see how can you see people collaborating on events, and where do you see opportunity on that front? Firstly, to Kate.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a big believer in collaboration anyway, and I think the only way, going back to the experience that we talked about, the only way to create that wow experience that has to be guaranteed in order to get people through the door and not people decide to take their events online, is to collaborate with suppliers and anybody. And it doesn't have to be, it's amazing how often, even if I'm like scrolling through LinkedIn, I see people and I think, oh, I could work with them. Whereas if I'd seen their job title before, I would have never have, wouldn't have made that link. So collaboration is where the kind of sales are going to come from, because as we know, you will pull resources and pull contacts and connections, and we're going to go further. I think as well, on Ashanti's point about hybrid events, just picking up on that, the AV people are going to be for want of a better phrase, the kind of winners in this, the people who supply AV and the specialists in that area. And I think some hotels and venues have been very kind of forward thinking, that's it. They've seen further into the future quite quickly, right at the beginning of lockdown, worked out what direction this is going to go in, and invested huge amounts of money in their AV. Beforehand, year ago, it can be a decision whether to go to a venue or not, as in terms of how good their AV is. Hotels are quite expected to have relatively good AV, but if they didn't matter. Moving forward, it's going to be absolutely essential that they've got AV and they know what they're doing with it, because lots of hotels and venues have IT managers on site who's really the maintenance manager and who could probably plug a projector and screen in, but that's about the limit. There's going to need to be, it can be external, but there's going to need to be teams that are slick and know what they're doing. They're the ones that are going to make it, I think.
Absolutely. We're seeing it in the networking world, that people think it's just a case of sending out a Zoom link and then it's a networking event, when it's not quite the reality of it. Ashanti, from your experience around the strategy of an event and that sort of thing, where's opportunity for people to collaborate with what you do with event organisers?
Okay, so again, one of the obvious ones that Kate just picked up on, if you're an AV production company, if you also are adept at live streaming and content, this is where it's going to come in real handy. So you work with a venue, work with the AV production company, and if you can kind of stream that content out to more platforms, reach more people from that one event, you're going to be really, really useful to the industry right now. That is why virtual events, and you picked up on it, people, I think in the beginning of COVID, there was this thing that it's just a Zoom meeting, basically, or it's a webinar. And I heard a lot of people talk about webinar fatigue and Zoom fatigue. The tools in themselves don't make something virtual. It doesn't make a virtual experience or an event. So we have to start thinking wider. I mean, one of the examples I always use is Love Island, right? Love Island is a virtual event. It always was. Most people are watching Love Island through Twitter in real time. Okay, so when you start approaching the NFL, it's another great example of a virtual event. Even though they have their physical in-stadium event, all of the other things that go around that, like the Super Bowl or the advertising, those are great examples of how virtual events can be profitable to event organizers and a great experience for your attendees, your visitors, or your delegates. So it's really thinking about now, okay, with all of these layers, we need content, we need social media, we need AV production, we need a great venue. What skills are required now to deliver on that? So we've been approached by many kind of traditional event planning companies and agencies because they can't deliver maybe the virtual side. But likewise, we have clients who want an in-person element to their event. So we can continue to work with those agencies. So it's really about understanding now the immersive experience that clients will require and where you fit in delivering that 360 experience.
Absolutely. What success stories have you guys seen so far in terms of ways that whether your clients have adapted or they're already forward thinking about how they're implementing plans? Firstly, to you, Kate, maybe from a venue perspective, what are some things that have made you think, oh, they've really got that there, and what have they done exactly?
So, I mean, the first one that I saw weeks ago before the announcement that hotels could open, I'm going to name them, Park Plaza, Birmingham, Ryan, I think the GM is. And I saw it because I'm connected with him again on LinkedIn, and he put an infographic of the client journey of every touch point. And the reason why I why it stuck in my mind is because it was the first one that I saw, and linking in with Ashanti's point as well, that that people are going to need to understand hybrid and how it works. That needs to come really quickly, because every day things are changing, and the kind of quicker the implementation and education on this, the quicker the business is going to come in. So I was impressed that it was done so early. And the other thing that I was impressed with is how creative the points were, which I mentioned before. There's obviously lots of new SOPs. Everyone's doing cleaning and branding, like clean Holiday Inn and stuff like that, and safe environments. But there's also stuff that they've detailed that I perhaps wouldn't have thought of. For instance, no throw cushions on the beds because they're not single-use items, and things like in meeting rooms, single-use items won't be there for you. You can request them if you want them. Or I saw another hotel had single-use items in the meeting room, and then they had like a clean me box. So once you've used a stapler, you put it in there and they antibacterial it, clean it. So that's one example of kind of being ahead of the game, I guess. Since then, I've seen loads of them, and they're all really good. Another thing is, again, I'm pretty sure it's exclusive. Hotel chain have invested a huge amount of money in AV. Right at the beginning, which is really forward thinking and savvy of them. And another last example is Alexander Hotels, hotel chain, who I work with. They have Elliot, the marketing director, has collaborated with Silent Pool Gin and come up with a Silent Pool Gin garden with outside spacing. You don't have to sit near anyone. It's just an example of a package that any venue can do, corporate or not corporate, where they've collaborated really well and created this package that ticks all the boxes of social distancing and the sort of thing that people want to do now. That I want to go for a gym with my friends. There are a couple that stand out.
Absolutely. The single-use items things, there's a really good point. And also we're hearing a lot from our members about wanting to get out and see clients and the best ways in doing that, and using some of the venues out there to utilise it. So it's good to know that.
And I think as well that there's been a couple of examples, which I know is kind of where we thought we were headed, futuristic things, which is ordering from your app, so you don't have to get up from the table. There's pretty much everybody, I think, is doing table service, but some of them have gone one step further, and that kind of automation and AI is somewhere where we kind of knew we'd be headed, but maybe we didn't think it would be quite so instant. And it seems to be happening from the 4th of July.
I see. And Ashanti, same question to you. What success stories have you seen from some of your clients, and some of those that have been perhaps the most proactive, having seen all events cancelled for the foreseeable?
So one of our clients is in the food and drink trade show market, and obviously in the UK they just all, like dominoes, were cancelled. And for once, which obviously we were very happy about, they decided to go virtual. So, being the first and the only trade show in the food and drink space anyway to go virtual, they're seeing phenomenal success. The sponsorship packages just went just like that when we created those, and suppliers are coming on board, basically. And the brilliant thing is the startup cost is much lower. So where they would be spending, thousands just on the venue and all of those, the stands and stuff that goes with it, the startup costs just dropped phenomenally, and they're on a roll. And the great thing, obviously, what we did is encourage them to create a resource hub that lives on longer than just their one-day events. And now their event is over a period of 30 days, which gives more visibility, maximum value to the sponsors, as well as the suppliers, who each have their own virtual booths. So that is like a brilliant example of, again, I think to Kate's point, they didn't want to go virtual. They thought they had a few more years, but this changed things massively. And so we had to do the education piece with them. The other thing I'd say, if you're a venue, one of the things we have seen done well in North America is creating a content studio in your venue, right? And this, what we mean by that is a place where people can go and record videos, record podcasts, where you can film, take pictures of everything that's happening in your venue and stream it out live, or have that content again, which you can use in future marketing. Like, those little things are going to make a huge difference, especially probably for B2C and B2B, to be fair, but it's going to make a huge difference in the B2B space, maximizing your content value.
Yeah, maximizing the space is going to be crucial. It was crucial before, but now even more so. And I think a lot of venues will be looking to maximize that. And that leads me to a question that Luke Bryce from Blue Line Security has asked, which was, as venue capacities lower and running costs increase, how can venues and events increase revenues without tripling the cost of a pint? I see where Luke's going with that one. But what can they do to balance that, to not put a big influx in the cost to visitors and attendees and that sort of thing, but still maximize their revenues as best as they can? Kate, firstly to you.
I mean, it's a $1 million question, really. I wouldn't suggest increasing prices. I wouldn't suggest lowering prices either to get in business. But what I would suggest is being creative with what you're offering, being savvy in terms of the experience and how that looks, educating your team on hybrid events, and all of these link to converting the business. So whatever business comes to you needs to be converted, because that's the only way that you're going to hit budget. So all of these links tie in, and your team has probably got smaller now, unfortunately. Probably venues and hotels, obviously, and businesses around the world have had to let people go. So the ones that you're working with need to be thoroughly invested in, and make sure that, as I say, they're converting and they're educated in what's happening. Look at the pros of hybrid events against the pros/cons of purely virtual events, because they're not just selling your venue anymore, they're selling a hybrid event or an experience. It's not going to be about what the venue can offer necessarily, because most venues, let's face it, all can offer similar things. Yeah,
I think what I take from that is that venues have also got to play a part in educating event organisers, in going back to Ashanti's point about the longevity of an event, with the strategy after an event, and recycling that content, recycling that information is something that event organisers can charge for to warrant the prices for an event space. And
there's a statistic
I
was just thinking of a statistic that I always harp on about with my clients, but I think it's really relevant. 79% of B2B buyers will buy from a trusted advisor, not just a sales rep. And us, from a venue capacity or a venue finder or event organisers, really have to have that holistic view of the event. Even if you think you're selling a meeting room, you're selling the experience, you're selling the tickets that they need to sell, you're selling the marketing package. Like, you now have so many jobs within that kind of one sale. So education.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ashanti, I'll come to you with a question from David Thompson, actually. He's asked, do you see marketing of venues will now focus on demonstrating customer safety as opposed to traditional focus? Or how would you answer that?
Yeah, so everything Kate's just said, I think, answers that question, which is that, look, safety is always going to be important, but what's going to tip the balance, I think, is the overall experience, and being in your marketing, being aware that people still want to come and get value from their event. Bottom line, yes, stay safe, but they want the value. So I actually wouldn't dial down on talking about value necessarily. I would just make sure that the safety things that you put in place are just very clear and easy to understand.
And I think as well, all venues and hotels are banging on about safety at the moment, which is vital and which should be. But I think once people have come to you, they're going to assume that you're safe and you're going against government guidelines. So you don't really need to harp on about it then. You need to harp on about your difference compared to other venues and the experience again.
Yeah. And just quickly on what Kate said, like, that's that point about collaborative and consultative sales in general, and your whole team, like marketing, sales, everybody needs to be on board with being consultative now and looking at the holistic, what are the end goal for that particular customer, and what can you do to facilitate that end goal, and that way you have more chances of converting that business.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a question from Mike that I'll go to actually, sort of around the single-use items thing. But I know Mike runs a lot of business-to-business exhibitions. He's asked, exhibitors like to give out flyers, brochures, giveaways, and things like that. Would you agree that this is something that will have to stop, or will those kind of approaches need to change slightly? Kate, sorry.
I mean, this is something that I'm actually working on at the moment. I think it's gonna. I don't think have to stop, maybe, but I do think people will want to stop it, if only from a sustainability point. If people have got two angles here, they don't want to spread the germs by handing people things, but also it's not sustainable to be handing out flyers and putting them in the bin when you get home. And something I'm looking at personally for Selling Savvy, which wasn't my idea, so I can't take credit for it, but it's a great idea, is all we're going to have is business cards. And on the business cards, it will have name and email address and all that stuff. And then on the back, we're going to have 2 QR codes, one to my LinkedIn profile and one to a virtual brochure. And that business card does everything.
Yeah, we ourselves are looking, or started to implement the use of QR codes on cards at exhibitions and things like that back in February. So we started it, but
you're ahead of the game.
I can start to see how that will play a part. And Ashanti, to combat because a lot of businesses here, probably everyone uses promotional items in some way, shape or form, whether it's a pen, mug, whatever it may be. What could people do online or virtually that could replace something like that?
Yeah, so so use your QR code and take people to a dedicated landing page that is dynamic and immersive. Use video, for example. Think of every kind of, and there's some guys here who do video, by the way. I met a lovely guy, Rob, I think in one of the rooms. Use video on your dedicated landing page and make sure it says everything they need to know, that it's inviting, it's welcoming. Kate will probably know more about this but make sure you're responding to those queries that come in like sharpish as well. So when people actually are landing on those pages and maybe they're giving you an email address or they're clicking a button, make sure you're really quick. You either have a sequence lined up of emails or you've got somebody in your team who's calling them back immediately. So be creative. Please don't send them to like public live stream places, like, because sometimes sending people to your social media feed, where they're going, you can't trace them. That's why we recommend things like dedicated, like a virtual brochure or a dedicated landing page where you can track your visitors and get back to them really quickly.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Ryan asks, and that was Rob Malloy actually from Ali and Mo Media that you mentioned. Yeah, highly recommend Rob. Top bloke. Ryan's asked, and again, this is probably $1 million question, but I'll ask it. How do you think people will deal with the reopening of venues and events post-lockdown? Firstly, to Kate, what are you hearing on the front line? From our perspective, I could speak to 2 members. One will give me the answer of, I'm not comfortable going to events until next year. Some will say, I'm ready to go now. So what's the feeling in your case?
I was literally just going to say that. I've got venue finding clients who are saying, hotels, stop hounding my event bookers, my clients, because they're nervous. And even though you're being as safe as you possibly can be, they don't want to feel forced to go to meetings. And then I've got some people like myself who's going to a hotel next week because I feel really trusted in their hands. All I'm doing is going for a coffee in the lobby. I know that I've seen pictures of it. I know that there's tables far apart. I know that they're doing table service. I know that I won't be hugging my client or whatever. Not like hug my clients normally. So I really think it's 2 pools of people. I think the bigger question is rather than how are public and clients going to react to it, how are the venues going to promote it, which we've talked a lot about. But if they promote it in the right way, then people will feel safe to go there.
Yeah, Ashanti, same.
The hotel I'm going to next week, the reason I'm going there is because I feel safe in their hands. There's lots of hotels near me, obviously, but I'm picked this specific one.
And that comes from their messaging and how they're positioning themselves. Yeah. Absolutely. And Ashanti, the same question to you. What are you seeing with your clients, particularly around event organisers and that sort of thing? What's their approach to it all?
They're raring to go. It's been like that for the last 3 months, and I've seen particularly in the last week We see lots of people talking on LinkedIn about how they're going back to work. They're showing pictures, videos of themselves walking into the office. And a lot of them have been telling us, look, business is now picking back up again. Because obviously you need a lead time on marketing a lot of these events as well. So you kind of have to get started, even if you're thinking about Q4 or Q1 of next year. So people are really happy to get back to work as well.
Yeah.
I also think in terms of looking further in the future, like you say, Ashanti, we don't quite know what hotels' diaries are going to look like. They could be ram-packed and you're not going to get the room that you want or the space that you want or need. Or they could be completely empty and hotels are going to cut their rates. But the further you look in advance, the kind of better, I guess.
And I think a point to add on to that is also to be very have some empathy towards these venues as well. It's new to them, isn't it? And I'm sure when we get back to online to face-to-face events, we'll do some things that probably aren't right, but I think it's just having that empathy and understanding that it's new to everyone, isn't it? And that will start from this weekend. So we will see.
Yeah, I really agree. And everybody's just learning together, aren't they? What would help if maybe Boris would give us the go-ahead? That would help us. So we actually know that we're allowed to run.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people. Anyway. I'm sure a lot of people would agree. But politics aside, I'll pick up the last question from Chris Audio Tech, and those guys are very relevant to the conversation around. They install a lot of technology and AV into offices and venues and things like that. He's asked. The B word, actually, with the other upcoming event.
You said politics.
No, I said B. Brexit. With Brexit, how do you think this is going to affect events? And I'll come to Ashanti, actually. He says, for example, the expo and live events business, is that just going to further emphasize the need for hybrid events?
I believe so. So I think what we're seeing is that, as I say, regional and domestic events, I think will be fine for in person. You do have to make sure that there's hyper value, though, to bring people out of their homes, other than that, this serendipity meetings that people love in the B2B space. But then virtual is going to be your friend, particularly if you were international before. Now is going to be the time to dig deeper into the virtual, I think, to make sure that you can keep growing your audience, monetize your content, monetize your sponsorship relationships, so that you can see this period through.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably another conversation in itself around sponsors and that kind of thing, but they're definitely worth considering. And same question to you, Kate. How will it affect from a venue side of things and sales in particular?
I mean, I think it's not good news, as everybody can imagine, in terms of larger conferences that are really the business that hits budget usually for hotels and venues. A lot of them are global and everybody flies in, and there's so much revenue associated with venues for that accommodation, incremental spend, obviously the rooms, you need to be bigger with more people. However, it has been less and less common in the last maybe 5 years, I would say, because of this sustainability push again. And I've seen certainly lots of offices who used to be clients for board meetings now have their own board rooms with TVs all over the room, and they have a massive global board meeting in-house. They don't have to pay anything to the hotels. So again, what the hotels can do to that is educating hotel and venue teams in why they would need to come off-site, the reasons, and that's always people say, oh, because you think differently, you're away from your emails, and that's kind of by the by with any venue, but really drill down in what your venue has to offer. And if they don't offer anything, make something, be creative, because I know it sounds stupid, but being adaptable and fast-paced and creative, they're the kind of ones that are going to succeed and win the business. The kind of small business that's out there.
Fantastic. Well, guys, we're out of time, so we have to get people back to networking. But I really appreciate your insight, and I'm sure a lot of people here, whether they're event organisers, event attendees, venues themselves, have taken a lot from it and can even share that insight. And we'll definitely be taking Ashanti's inspiration and sharing this video online so people can share it with their contacts as well. But I really appreciate your time. I'll take you guys off the screen now, but thanks very much to you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Ashanti, thank you very much, Kate. Great. Well, thank you.